This is 8 Minutes, a podcast helping you understand the energy and climate challenge in just a few minutes. I'm your host, Paul Schuster. There is no doubt that hydrogen is going to play a big role in decarbonizing our economy. In many ways, it's being touted as a superfuel, able to take over for natural gas but at zero emissions. But of course, it's not that easy. Hydrogen has a role to play in industry and manufacturing, but what's the future for hydrogen in home heating? Can we repurpose our natural gas distribution infrastructure and simply burn hydrogen instead? The short answer, no. It doesn't make sense. So let's slow the hype train for home heating via hydrogen and discuss why the industry is thinking that this may be a dead end. 8 minutes. It's how long it takes the sun's rays to hit Earth, or, well, we dropped the kids off at summer camp this past weekend, and I'm pretty certain that they had forgotten about us in less than 8 minutes. To be a kid again. Let's get it on. The United States has around 3 million miles of natural gas infrastructure already in place. Wouldn't it be real nice to be able to repurpose and reuse those pipes to flow hydrogen instead of natural gas? I mean, hydrogen burns clean with no carbon emissions, and when produced with renewable energy can dramatically reduce our emissions footprint. This seems like a win-win situation for our future and our existing utility companies. And those natural gas distribution utilities are really promoting the future of hydrogen in their networks. For instance, National Grid has launched the HyGrid project on Long Island to heat 800 homes with the clean fuel. And in the UK, Cadent Gas and British Gas are attempting to pilot home hydrogen projects across entire communities. But a torrent of research is suggesting that home heating via hydrogen may not work. Jan Rosenow, European Director of the Regulatory Assistance Project in the UK, published a review last September of 32 independent studies looking into using hydrogen for home heating. In none of them did hydrogen win out as the most efficient resource. When compared to using heat pumps, district heating, or solar thermal, hydrogen for space heating purposes ends up being a poor substitute. The main culprit? It takes electricity to create the hydrogen in the first place. So why not just use that electricity to directly heat the home rather than going through the middle step of converting it to hydrogen? Take this into consideration. Using solar power to convert water to hydrogen via electrolysis is about 80% efficient. Then burning that hydrogen in a home furnace is about 85% efficient, which means that the overall process has trouble just getting to a 70% efficiency hurdle. Now, compare that to an air-sourced heat pump that uses 1 unit of electricity to create 3 to 4 units of heat. That means that it requires 5 times the amount of electricity to create the same unit of heat from a heat pump. It's a matter of physics that's difficult to overcome. But let's dig into this a bit more. Let's talk about costs. Even a poorly efficient hydrogen unit could still make sense if the costs are so cheap as to offset the inefficiency. For one thing, electricity prices are higher than natural gas prices, so maybe the resultant savings make sense. Well, not really. Despite the somewhat higher capital costs for electric heat pumps, the offsetting economics don't really flow through. The Rosenow report suggested that heat pumps become more economically efficient at a seasonal coefficient of performance of greater than 3. That coefficient of performance, by the way, measures how well the heat pump converts electricity into heat. An SCOP of 3 means that the heat pump can convert 1 kilowatt of electricity into 3 kilowatts of heat. So if 3 SCOP is the magic number, how are heat pumps performing? According to the Heating Force website, the average air-sourced heat pump in the US has an SCOP of 3.4, so more than enough to justify the economics. In fact, Cornwall Insights in the UK ran their own study on average home heating bills and concluded that using hydrogen could increase home energy bills by as much as 70%. And it's not just economic and efficiency that affect hydrogen. Even going back to our original argument that reusing 3 million miles of existing infrastructure has to count for something, the reality is that those pipes can't simply be repurposed for hydrogen flows. Hydrogen is a much smaller molecule than methane, which is what natural gas is. And that small molecule size causes problems, specifically something called hydrogen embrittlement. See, Hydrogen is so small that at pressure, it can actually permeate the steel of the pipe, which reduces the amount of stress needed for the pipe to induce a crack, and any existing imperfections would simply be enhanced. To get around this, utilities would have a few options. For instance, they could blend the hydrogen with natural gas, which has been shown to work in existing systems. But, well, that kind of misses the point, doesn't it? To convert to 100% hydrogen, the entire pipeline system would need to be looked at for different materials or plating that could be used. And that kind of defeats the whole value of reusing infrastructure in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong, utilities would love to do this. The utility revenue model is a little weird for those who don't live in this industry, as well. Utilities don't actually make money on the amount of electricity or gas that they sell. They make money on the infrastructure that they install, and the return on that infrastructure is regulated by the local commission. Invest in more infrastructure and you get paid more. So switching out an entire gas network, well, that has appeal. But doing something like that doesn't make sense for heating residential homes. Let's be clear. Hydrogen will play a role in decarbonizing industrial processes, such as steel manufacturing, where, quite frankly, it may be one of the only options to get away from fossil-fueled thermal needs. But for home heating, that's where heat pumps have a distinct advantage. Which brings me back to some of the pilot projects that utilities are doing in the hopes of convincing regulators and policymakers that hydrogen has a future for residential heating. Take the example I alluded to earlier, where Cadent Gas and British Gas wanted to run pilot programs in 2 English communities and demonstrate the clean energy potential of the fuel. The town of Whitby recently decided enough was enough and scrapped the plans for that program. In addition to all of the reasons I laid out above about inefficiencies and high cost, they also raised an agency question. What do you do for the residents who don't want to switch out natural gas for hydrogen? You can't very well convert only part of the pipeline system. It's kind of an all or nothing proposition. Do you charge the residents who have electrified or want to stay on gas for the capital costs associated with converting the entire system? Charge many to benefit the few? Hydrogen has lots of applications. Industry, shipping, long-distance freight, perhaps. But one area that it doesn't have a future in is residential heating. 32 independent studies verify this. The laws of physics verify this. So the next time you hear about utilities investing in hydrogen neighborhoods or providing discounts on hydrogen-ready boilers, keep in mind that this is an industry that's trying to hold on to their existing business model. Natural gas distribution will tail off as we decarbonize, but that doesn't mean that the infrastructure will be repurposed for hydrogen. I'm Paul Schuster, and this has been your 8 Minutes.